In America, there are towns where you can no longer buy food. Not because of a natural disaster, not because the town was abandoned, but because the last grocery store left. Whitehall, Arkansas. In February 2026, a winter storm hit Whitehall, Arkansas. The ice was heavy enough to collapse the roof of Brookshire's grocery store, the only grocery store in town. Employees noticed the ceiling beginning to sag and got everyone out before the walls started caving in. Nobody was hurt, but the building was condemned. And then, a few weeks later, Brookshire's made it official. They weren't coming back. For over 40 years, that store had been the only place in Whitehall to buy groceries. It had been through several names, several ownership changes, but it had always been there. People had their first jobs there, employees stayed for decades. One resident said some of the people working there now were the same people working there when she had her first job 30 years ago. It feels like they make you part of the family, she said. Now residents are driving out of town for everything. Some are going to stores in neighborhoods they describe as less safe. Others say the distance just doesn't work with their schedule. The elderly and the people without cars have it worst. And here's the part that says everything about where we are. Some residents are now hoping Walmart will come in and fill the empty lot. The same Walmart that has been closing stores across the country. It's a company that won't give up easily, one resident said. Whitehall is not alone. Across America, towns are losing their last store, and what happens next is never simple. Oriental, North Carolina. Oriental, North Carolina is a small waterfront town on the Pamlico Sound. In 2015, a Walmart Express moved in. Town and Country Grocery had been a local fixture for 44 years. It couldn't compete with Walmart's prices. It closed. Then, less than 2 years after Walmart arrived, Walmart left. The store hadn't been profitable enough. Corporate made the call. Oriental was left with no grocery store and no pharmacy. The town that had supported a local grocer for over 4 decades suddenly had nothing because the thing that replaced it decided to leave. This is the pattern that plays out again and again across rural America. A big chain comes in, undercuts local prices, sometimes selling milk and eggs below cost just to pull customers away. The local stores can't sustain those losses. They close. And then, when the big chain decides the location isn't profitable enough either, it closes too. Except now, there's nothing left to come back. Oriental eventually found partial solutions. But the 44-year store was gone. The pharmacy was gone. And the community had learned something it wouldn't forget. The store that replaced everything they had didn't actually care about them at all. Fairfield, Alabama. Some towns get hit twice. Fairfield, Alabama is a suburb of Birmingham with about 11,000 residents. It had already been hit hard. U.S. Steel had laid off around 1,100 workers the year before. Then Walmart announced it was closing its Fairfield location. 300 more jobs gone. And for residents without cars, crossing the dangerous roadways on foot to reach the next nearest grocery store, a Piggly Wiggly and a Save-A-Lot miles away became the new reality. That gives the stores the opportunity to raise their prices, one 66-year-old resident said as she loaded bags into her car. Because you don't have anywhere else to go. She was right. That's exactly what happens. When there's only one option, competition disappears. And the people who pay the price are the ones who can't afford to drive 30 minutes for a better deal. Fairfield was already down. The Walmart closure pushed it further. It's the kind of compounding loss that doesn't make national headlines, one closure on top of another, in a community that was already struggling to hold itself together. Coal Hill, Arkansas. When Walmart closed its nearby location, residents suddenly had to drive 15 miles to reach the nearest supermarket or pharmacy. For most people in most parts of America, 15 miles sounds like nothing. But in a rural town where a significant portion of residents are elderly, low income, or without reliable transportation, 15 miles is a real barrier. It means a 30-mile round trip for groceries. It means that if you run out of a prescription medication, you're not running to the pharmacy, you're planning a trip. It means that fresh produce, the kind you'd pick up twice a week, becomes something you think about scheduling. Coal Hill doesn't have a dramatic story. No collapse, no news conference, no residents going viral. Just a quiet, steady erosion of daily life in a small town that lost access to something most Americans take completely for granted. There are hundreds of coal hills across this country. Most of them never make the news. Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Brooklyn Center is a suburb of Minneapolis. It's not a rural town, it's not isolated, and when Walmart announced it was closing the Brooklyn Center location, the city manager didn't mince words. He called it devastating and a major economic loss to our region. That's not the language of a small-town mayor trying to keep people calm. That's a government official describing what the loss of a single store means to an urban community. The jobs, the tax revenue, the accessible grocery option for residents who relied on it. Brooklyn Center has a significant low-income population. Many residents use that Walmart not just for groceries, but for pharmacy services, household goods, and the kind of one-stop shopping that makes life manageable when you're working multiple jobs and don't have a lot of time. The closure of the Brooklyn Center Walmart was part of a broader wave of closures. Walmart announced in 2023 stores the company described as underperforming. What underperforming means to a corporation and what it means to the community that depended on that store are two entirely different things. Brooklyn Center is still trying to fill that gap. Immokalee, Florida. Immokalee is a farm worker community of about 26,000 people in Collier County, home to Naples, one of the wealthiest cities in Florida. Nearly 30% of Immokalee residents live below the poverty line. Most of them work in the fields, picking the tomatoes, peppers, and citrus that end up in restaurants and grocery stores across the country. In October 2025, their only full-service grocery store closed. Winn-Dixie shut down as part of an acquisition by Aldi. The plan is to eventually convert the location into an Aldi store, but no opening date has been announced. The full rollout isn't expected to be completed until 2027. In the meantime, the nearest full-service grocery store is in Ave Maria, a 20-minute drive away. For the majority of Immokalee residents who walk or bike to get around, that's a 3-hour walk each way. The county set up a free bus service to help. It was discontinued after a few weeks due to low ridership. And when Aldi does eventually open, it won't accept WIC benefits, the federal nutrition program that many Immokalee families rely on to buy baby formula and other specific food items. For those families, the replacement isn't actually a solution. They never consulted us, one Immokalee mother of 4 said after the closure. They never asked us what would be beneficial for the community. We were never asked. We were never consulted. There is a particular cruelty in this story. The people harvesting food for the rest of America are now struggling to feed their own families, and the county they live in, Collier County, is one of the wealthiest in Florida. Wealth nearby doesn't mean anything when the last store decides to leave. Wichita, Kansas. In 2008, a pastor in Wichita bought a rundown shopping plaza. It had been a haven for prostitution and gang shootings. His plan was simple: get a grocery store in there. It took him 6 months of phone calls. Every Monday, same number, until Walmart finally picked up. Walmart came, the plaza transformed, local workers got hired, elderly residents who couldn't drive could walk a few blocks to fill their prescriptions. Families who had been living in a food desert suddenly had access to fresh produce and meat. We had a place that used to be an eyesore, Pastor Kevis Harding said, but then we had a first-class shopping center in this urban neighborhood. Then Walmart closed. Yes, there are other Walmarts in Wichita, several, in fact. But for the residents of Kenmar, most of whom don't own a car, those stores might as well be in another city. The neighborhood market had been walkable. The alternatives are not. My heart just broke. I was disgusted that it's about money. It's not about the people. The Kenmar neighborhood has been a food desert ever since 2016. The man who spent 6 months calling Walmart every single week to get them into his community is now living with what their departure left behind. Some decisions get made in a boardroom in a matter of minutes. Some people spend years trying to recover from them. Cairo, Illinois. Cairo sits at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. It was once a thriving transportation hub with entertainment venues, retail shops, and grocery stores on nearly every corner. Then the river traffic moved on. Factories closed. The civil rights era brought additional wounds as white business owners, refusing integration, abandoned the town. Cairo kept shrinking. By 2015, Cairo had held on to just one grocery store, Wonder Market, a local independent that had kept the community fed. When it closed, Cairo became a food desert. For years, residents had to drive at least 30 miles to reach a Walmart or Kroger. The closer option was Dollar General, which sold canned goods but no fresh produce. In 2023, after 18 months of planning and significant state funding, a community grocery cooperative called Rise finally opened. More than 100 people showed up on opening day. Board members held signs reading, "We are no longer a food desert." People celebrated. But that same month, the Dollar General at the edge of town started selling fresh fruits, vegetables, and meat. Rise couldn't compete on pricing. The walk-in cooler broke. Sales slumped as residents fell back into old habits. On the 31st of January 2026, Rise closed its doors, citing low foot traffic. Cairo is a food desert again. Illinois invested $13.5 million in a grocery initiative to open 6 stores across the state. 4 of them have now closed. Cairo was one of them. Some problems can't be solved with a grant. Englewood, Chicago, Illinois. Here's where the story gets complicated. Everything we've talked about so far has been rural towns, small communities, places far from major cities. You might be thinking, this is a rural problem. Urban areas have options. Meet Englewood. Englewood is a neighborhood on Chicago's south side. It's not rural. It's surrounded by one of America's great cities. And in September 2016, Whole Foods opened a store there. At the groundbreaking, the co-CEO of Whole Foods stood in front of the community and said this would be one of the most meaningful things we've done as a company. People believed him. The store was celebrated as a symbol of investment in a community that had been underserved for decades. On the 13th of November, 2022, Whole Foods closed it. The store hadn't been profitable enough. No detailed explanation was given. The neighborhood that had been told a Whole Foods was a sign of progress was left, once again, without a full-service grocery store. This is the point of this entire video. This isn't just about small towns in Arkansas or coal communities in Alabama. When Whole Foods can't make it work in a Chicago neighborhood, when Dollar General defeats a government-funded co-op in Illinois, when Walmart creates food deserts by leaving the same communities, it created food deserts by entering. This is a systemic problem. These aren't 10 isolated stories. They're 10 windows into the same thing. A country where the economics of retail and the needs of communities have stopped lining up. And the people left behind in Whitehall, in Oriental, in Cairo, in Englewood are still waiting for something to fill the empty lot where their last store used to be. Mount Pulaski, Illinois. When Mount Pulaski lost its last grocery store, some residents decided they weren't going to just accept it. They opened their own. In June 2020, Market on the Hill opened its doors in a town of just 1,500 people. A community-run market offering fresh produce, meat, and deli items, much of it locally sourced. It was built on donations, borrowed equipment, and the labor of people who had never run a grocery store before. Around the same time, a Dollar General opened in town too. Market on the Hill is still there. "We have a deli and fresh baked goods every day," said one board member. That's something Dollar General can't offer. It's an inspiring story. But it's also a story about what communities are forced to do when the market abandons them, when the economics of retail say a town of 1,500 people isn't worth serving. Mount Pulaski is not unique. Across rural Illinois, dozens of communities have lost their grocery stores. Some find solutions like this one. Many don't. And even the success stories require enormous community effort just to maintain something that used to exist automatically. The fact that a town opening a basic grocery store is considered a victory tells you something about how far things have fallen.